Chicom or the Chinese invasion through finance or through selling their junk around the world. Chinese expatriate entrepreneurs find new gold rush destination in Mexico. Seeking economic opportunity, Chinese merchants build bustling markets, sell made-in-China goods, and deal with the occasional resistance from Mexican vendors. Along with the migrant influx, Chinese brands, including DD and BYD, are gaining greater exposure in Mexico. Now, let me tell you a little story. I lived in Mexico for 2 years.
Yes.
And I tried to import something into Mexico, like car speakers for a car I had in Mexico. And I wanted to import an amplifier and speakers. They wouldn't let the whole package come into the country because some of it was made in China. And back in the day, Mexico was really against any Chinese-made products coming into Mexico. It was almost impossible to get it through customs. If it's made in China, they won't allow it entering Mexican territory. When you're in Mexico, in local towns, small towns, medium towns, everything's made in Mexico. The clothing, you got some cell phones and stuff that are being imported in and stuff. Yeah, I get that. But everything from the mannequins to everything's made in Mexico, right? And now Chinese are flooding into Mexico, and here it is right here. You can see they're opening businesses and there's this building here in the Centro Mayorista. Here it is in Mexico. Plaza Izgaza 151. There's Chinese writing on it. And Chinese goods being sold and pushing out local Mexican vendors and Mexican-made goods and bringing their toxic Chinese plastic garbage. And there it is right there all over Mexico. And just Chinese writing everywhere. And boutiques and malls and everything in Chinese writing. And people are saying, well, Mike, you need to embrace, that's where it's going. No. This is an economic takeover, and this is how they basically did it all over the West, and now they're going to Mexico to do it. Go ahead and tell me what you think of this. Am I racist or what?
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, you're practically Hitler, man. No, look, where China was concerned, obviously when free trade got pushed through in the late 80s, early 90s, Mexico was a net, at least the intention was Mexico would be a net beneficiary because a lot of manufacturing jobs would go flooding out of Canada and the U.S. and they would go to Mexico instead, right? And let the maquiladoras build everything. You remember Ross Perot and that giant sucking sound of jobs going to Mexico?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that you could see them wanting to protect that at that time. But, Mexico has probably benefited from Chinese investment too. I mean, in the end, whatever China's doing, how is it different from what the Dutch East India Company was doing, or the British East India Company,
mm-hmm.
right? Or American or French or what have you? Overseas. The flag follows trade, right?
The same East Indian Trading Company that opened fire on Portuguese vessels, shipping vessels.
Probably.
Yeah. It's one of my historical. I collect, for people that are joining us tonight for the first time. I collect rare books. I've showed you a few of them, Supreme, when you came to my house, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Published pre 1840 or 1830. Anything before 1830, I collect. History books, fishing books, geography books, whatever books. Pre 1830, yeah. And yes, the East Indian Trading Company did open fire on Portuguese unarmed merchant ships that were trading to put them out of business, and that was a big deal.
They fought wars there for sure. Yeah. They all had their own militias, their own private armies, like in Indonesia, and India, and all these different places, right? Like even in Canada, the Hudson's Bay Company and the Northwest Company exchanged shots more than a few times.
Mm-hmm.
In the 17 and 1800s while they were staking out their territory, Yeah, it happens. That's all, Portuguese ships were being fired upon, but maybe it was some other trading company that decided they were out of their lane. Or it was an opportunity to steal a march on them, I mean, greed and all of these things are just part of the human condition. It is what it is. But where Mexico is concerned, yeah, I mean, China has got deep pockets. and Mexico's got problems.
But Mexico's going to pay for this later. That's the problem. That's not
Well,
what they're not seeing. What it was great back in 2010 when we were going to see a housing correction during the 2010 Olympics, and everyone was going to sell their homes in Vancouver after the 2010 Olympics because it was going to go bust. Housing was already 7-8 times the annual income. It was beyond reach for the average wage earner. What do? Vancouver model comes in, bring in your money from China. We don't care about our own people. And we've never seen a correction since then. And now the average home that you could buy in Alabama for $40,000 is $2 million here in a city in Canada. So,
yeah, well, part of the price of getting all of exporting our inflation overseas and importing Chinese deflation into consumer goods so that people could continue to afford to live here, right? Is you have to kind of let them. It's got to be a two-way thing, right? So you had to let the Chinese.
Well, it's not a two-way thing.
Come in and invest in Canada, and there was absolutely no regulation where they're being invested, and obviously a lot of people were being very, very generously paid off to look the other way. But those are the exact same colonial policies that Europeans used for hundreds of years. It's not fun to have it done to us, and I'm not justifying it in any way. We should at least be strong enough to close our frickin' borders and not let this kind of thing happen to us. But people are really, really stupid when they're greedy.
Yeah.
And we're all paying the price for it, no question.
Well, I brought up this thing back in 2011 or 2010 on my previous YouTube channel, creating a mirrored like country to country policy, where basically, what as a Canadian or a Portuguese citizen am I allowed to do in China? Okay, you're not allowed to do this. You can't open a business. You can't work there. You can't. And the same thing for Chinese coming to those countries. And then what can I do in Mexico as a Canadian? You can't this. You can't do that. You could buy this. You could do that. You could visit for 3 months. And then for Mexicans, that would be the same thing coming into Canada. That's what I would have done. If I was a leader of a country and I didn't want to look racist, all I do was mirror. So now for China, if a Canadian going to China, you can't buy nothing. You can't own property. You can't open a business there. You can't. You can't. So we would do the same for the Chinese coming into Canada or America or whatever they're allowed to do in each other's countries. That's it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. Yeah. I think the perception was, and this was probably the fragrant bait that was dangled by the Chinese too, because there was so much money for corporations in our part of the world to make trading with the Chinese that they probably didn't want to try something that would maybe stop that flow of money.
Well, now we got ports in Canada that are Chinese fully owned, and Canadians will be shot on sight.
It could get bad, but
there is. I'll tell you offline. I'll tell you offline of one.
If it got bad, sure, yeah. If it got bad, they could be nationalized again.
Right. Our biggest
gold.
If
it went to a point we were going to war. I mean, all those assets will be seized.
Well, China owns the biggest gold mine in Canada. They bought the biggest lithium-ion mine in Alberta. Mm-hmm. They bought. And people are saying, well, Mike, what's your problem? It's none of your business. Yeah, it's my business. It's because we're gutting out our country. We're shelling everything out. We should be one of the richest mineral resource country on the planet, right? We should be more aligned with America than having to deal with Chinese foreign money. And that's what destroyed it. That's what destroyed us, Supreme, was money laundering. Money laundering.
People don't give a shit about the kids. Pardon the vernacular, but, what about the kids? Where are they going to live? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
How are they going to have anything remotely like the life we had or our parents or grandparents had? Is anybody thinking about that? The answer is no. No, they're thinking about their belly and the points, several inches below there. That's all they're thinking about. They don't give a shit about the future at all.
Yeah,
we don't even live in a country anymore. It's a strip mall with an international jobs fair line up around the corner, and nobody cares. Oh, the numbers going up. That's all that matters, right? This is where we're at, man. Right? And these people, the other side of the Pacific, they see all that. They see that. I'm not saying they're these, ancient and, geniuses playing 10D chess either, okay? But just because of the structure of their government structure, they can plan a little further ahead than just every quarter or every electoral cycle.
So Americans,
we can't do that here anymore.
Americans watching this, pay very close attention if you're watching this in America, because you guys just started getting this problem when Biden took selection. Watch this. So Canada's National Housing Agency forecasts a 20% jump for home prices. Supreme, 20% jump on already a $2 million teardown?
Mm-hmm.
When Americans are watching us talking about this $3 million homes, they actually think it's like Shaquille O'Neal's house. They actually think it's P. Diddy's house, like these with mansions, with palatial mansions, with pools and water fountains and stuff.
Yes.
No,
yes.
it's a tear down house that was built after World War One.
Yeah, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. But why would they? They're forecasting a 20% jump. Was that nationwide? It's a big country with only a few cities and large communities sprinkled across it. It isn't quite like that. It's bad everywhere, but it's not like that everywhere. And how could they do that with the interest? Mortgage rates essentially tripled from where they were 3 years ago. I think they're just trying to talk up the market so it doesn't implode.
Well, they're forecasting that they're going to pivot and lower rates, right? And
why would they do that though? I mean, it's not just houses, Mike. It's overall inflation and fuel and food and the things that people actually need so they could stay alive inside the houses they can't afford, right?
Right.
Or the apartments they can't afford. Inflation is not cooled at all. If anything, rates have got to go up. And I know nobody wants to do that, but our between Canada and the U.S., the trillions of dollars worth of bonds that have to be rolled over like this fiscal year. Right. And what happens if there's no takers, and they need, an amount the size of the U.S. defense budget just to pay the interest on the national debt? The U.S. is adding $1 trillion every 100 days now. It's gone parabolic. Yeah, it's gone parabolic.
How many years has it been since we didn't bring up the debt clock here on the show? We brought it up. It's been years since we brought up that debt clock now, because it's got to a point where counting is futile.
Well, they're not doing anything about it. That's the problem. We'll look at it and, oh, yeah, well, that's cool. Yeah, the temperature's heating up. Yeah, it's heating up. Yeah, it's heating up. Yeah, the pressure gauge is heating up. What's that? Oh, we're going to lash the steam valves closed to make more power. Well, I don't know, guys. That's dangerous. The safety valves are there for a reason. Yeah, but, just for this electric cycle or whatever. Well, it's going to blow, guys. Yeah, get out of the city. They're not going to change anything. They're not changing anything. They can't. It's political suicide. Imagine the person that gets up there on the next debate, whether it's in the States or Europe or Canada or whatever, and says, the reality is we're completely screwed. And we're going to have to cut the size of government by 50% just to balance the books.
Just to balance it. Yeah, public sector needs to go down 50%.
Is doing in Argentina, right?
Yeah, 50% of public sector needs to go. I said about 60% in Canada, because we have too much. And states like Illinois, they got 4 or 5 layers of government down there, and that's got to cut back huge, because they're on the hook for those pensions. So guys, let's go over to what we said. Get out of the city, and that's something we've been boasting here on this channel for years. Get out of the city. Cost of food and fuel getting out of reach. Basic housing overpriced 6 years, 10 months ago. Get out now. Toronto mass exodus, housing crisis, they will tax you to death 5 years ago. Get out of Sydney, Australia. Top 10 reasons. Get out of your city now. We just over and over.
Run. Get out. Should have got out years ago.
I took my own medicine. I took my own medicine. Get out of the city now. People are leaving their cities of birth. America turning into Amerifornia. And that's the phenomena I gave to America, that it's turning into Amerifornia, like California as a whole. Multi-layer governments, homelessness, just public servants everywhere. And, just money laundering, just crime and all kinds of shit,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Think of any other market where it went up 15, 20, 21% a year for a decade and it wasn't a bubble. That's why you're shouting into the void at people about Canadian real estate for the last 10 years. Yes, it was already ridiculous 10 years ago, and now it's just insane. We're through the looking glass. Like we're in bizarro world, and people, I don't know what you're talking about. It went up 20% last year. Like, my area is doing great. I don't know what you mean. Yeah, 20% a year.
Some people were lucky to get 54% in 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, like real estate used to be one of those predictable things. You want to buy a house? Okay, it's going to be about $100,000.
Digital
You want to build a
Morpheus
house,
just
it's
sent me
going to be
two.
$100,000 plus the land. That was the general rule for decades. It was about $100,000 to build a new house.
Digital Morpheus sent me a $2 tip saying it's not sustainable, the U.S. debt. After the U.S. discloses there is a problem, we will be offered a new central bank digital currency, CBDC. The early adopters will be rewarded by the government. And yeah, he's right about that. That's something we've been worrying about: digital soul, digital prison, digital world, digital mind, digital blah, 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 blah for years. You were on the show with me back in 2019 when Darwin was rolling out the facial recognition scanning digital ID.
Yes. Yeah.
We did that show together back in 2019.
A lot of that is, I think, it's problem, reaction, solution. Darwin is probably one of those places that has a lot of crime. I mean, they let the crime happen, and that's probably why. That's their excuse to put the cameras out, because it does help. I mean, the cameras can be defeated, and there are places in London where there's, guys running around in Batman costumes, cutting them down and destroying them. So obviously everyone is just laying down and taking it. But the thing about CBDC is, you think of the amount of illicit activities in the world that happen, paid in U.S. cash, right? Sex trafficking, drug trafficking, organ trafficking, weapons trafficking, bribing this terror group or that terror group. The cash isn't going anywhere. So I think it would be, I think it's going to be large companies or institutions. I don't think it's going to be, maybe average people would sign on to it, but there's got to be a carrot to go with that stick. There's got to be some kind of debt relief or something. So, okay, yeah, sign up to get the chip in your hand or your forehead, or, sign up to get this new card or this CBDC. Turn your cash in 30 days because it won't spend anymore.
Right. They're going to put expiry dates.
That's not happening. I don't think that's happening. Like Finland and Norway and Sweden tried to go cashless, and now they're recommending people keep cash. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. There's lots of things where it just doesn't work. They would like to have everybody on a Skynet kind of a system, but man, there ain't the juice to run it right now.
I need it now because I'm making you an account.
Okay, sorry about that. My wife just came in. Can you close the door, babe?
Oh, no problem. No problem at all.
Anyways,
I mean, in the end, they sell it as something that's convenient and frictionless, right? And okay, well, you don't have to pay any more fees at the bank for making transfers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There's still just nickel and dime stuff. It's not going to lower your rent or your fuel prices or anything else. It's just, just give us more of your freedom in exchange for absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, no, they're not. They have to sell that. People can find workarounds, or they could just say no.
Yeah.
They're really taking a step, especially with their low approval ratings right now, to just go ahead and do something.
But Biden's approval rating,
be a carrot to go with the stick.
Well, Biden's approval rating, I think, is 8%, and it's lower than Obama's approval rating of, I think, 18%. So this is getting bad real fast, and the people don't have a say in it anymore. And this is when I think people are going to take it back. People have been very patient all this time. They've been extremely, extremely patient all this time, and it's been very. People have been very. I don't know how to say it, but especially the ones that are awake and that know what's going on have been very patient all this time. And is it like Putin? Patient, poking for 10 years. How long could people hold off until it's, you know what? I got nothing to lose anymore. Screw you. It will get to that eventually, Supreme. There's a breaking point in every man.
Yes, it will reach that point. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the government is aware of that. And if you get to the point that their CMP is giving, reports to the prime minister that, if something doesn't change soon, there's going to be major unrest. Like they just had a carbon tax protest. It's just people, whatever, coming out with their lawn chairs, right? And a bunch of cops showed up with hats and bats and automatic weapons. Like a complete overreaction. Just complete overreaction. And why are they doing that? Well, they're tall poppies, right? Here's people who are actually out doing something, and the government is giving them their response. If you so much as squeak higher than this number of decibels, we're going to ruin your life.
Water cannons.
Water cannon. Well, yeah. I mean, it would have been more appropriate for water cannons than having guys out there with frickin' guns.
Mm-hmm.
It was brutal. It was ridiculous. It was especially in Canada. Like, that's so cheesy. You know, a big American city, or, you know, in Brasilia or something. Okay, I could see them doing that. But Canada, come on, guys,
Mm-hmm.
please. That was just cringe. It's cringe. It's total cringe. It's not going to scare anybody.
No.
It's not. It's just like, okay, we outnumber you 90-1, guys. 100-1, 900-1. You know, if this is how it's going to go, then, you know, let's just do Lexington and Concord and get this over with.
Okay, let's take a walk down memory lane, Supreme, if that's okay. And speaking of Mike in the Night 228, they will pull the trigger on a pandemic, worldwide riots as world burns. My opinion, mark my words, like I said in previous episode of Mike in the Nights with the Raven, they will pull the trigger on a pandemic. Governments are losing grip. When was this, guys? This was, I'll tell you when this was, when the world was protesting that no one even hears about anymore. This was October 19, 2019. And look at the footage here on Mike in the Night, folks. And we had callers in from South America calling in and letting us know what was happening in Chile, Argentina, what was happening in Nicaragua, Uruguay, in pretty much everywhere. We were having this. Sorry, I got the Skype ringing here on the thing, but there it is right there. So are we going to go back to this, Supreme, 2019, the year of the protests, Supreme? Are we going to go back to this? Are we going back to 2019?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of already happening. I mean, you get the farmers spraying liquid manure on government buildings all over Europe, and you know, it's just North America is so enormous that, you know, farmers can't drive their tractors 1,000 miles from the prairies to go do that in Ottawa. Right, it's a little bit different here in North America than it is over there, but yes, yeah, they're going to hit the streets. Life is going to get even harder than it has been for so many people.
Well, here's the problem with that.
They're not going to take it much longer.
Here's the problem with that, Supreme. They can't pull the trigger on a pandemic anymore. It's game over. That's gone.
Yeah, you're pretty much down to war. And they're trying hard. They're trying hard, but they're not ready. They're not organized. These people can't organize an orgy in a whorehouse. You know, like, they just can't. This isn't what they thought they were going to be doing when they took power. They thought they were just going to be bringing in the new digital surveillance system and the green economy and basically take everybody's homes and farms. And, you know, they thought the frog was boiled enough. And they, you know, but they don't get out there and talk to the people who not only weren't boiled, pardon me, but actually were just getting pissed off. You know, they didn't want to talk to the people that they were actually affecting negatively, even though it was half the country in most of these places. They didn't want to hear from them. You know, they wanted to live in their cocoon and just push the buttons and pull the levers and play their little technocratic games, and they're retards. Mm-hmm. And the Western, they bought themselves some time with the pandemic and printing money and sending everybody home with the Justin bucks for a year or so, and now the hangover is showed up for that party, and yeah.
Hold on, let me add something here. Now, you see the scene here, and if you look at the chat, there's a live chat here. I can't manipulate any of this. And what was happening when the whole world was protesting like this? Someone's commenting here saying all the climate change stuff is just a distraction from the real issues that the SJWs latch onto. So there it is right there. The world was burning, and Western media was dubbing this happening all over the world. We had Japan was in protest, slightly protest, but not too big in Japan. But you had the big ones in Hong Kong. You had the big ones in France. You had the ones in Poland, Hungary. You had all of South America except 3 countries weren't protesting, and this no confidence in government. And if you read some of these live stream comments that were here, I was so shocked to reread some of this stuff and what people were saying. And they were trying to frame this as climate change the whole time in the West. And you know what, Supreme? People bought it as climate change. People in the West bought a lot of this as climate change, and it was not no confidence in government. It was just climate change, and people were demanding a change to the world before we lose it. And that Greta Thunberg did a good job getting that word out, misguiding people, right? So here it is, guys. This is 2019 Mike and the Knights. They will pull the trigger on a pandemic worldwide right as world burns from October 19, 2019.
Mike, I'll qualify what you just said. I agree with you completely. The people that watch that media believe it. But there's at least half the people, probably a lot more than half now, that don't believe a word of it. And again, they're talking to their captive audience. They're not talking to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, is it climate change? Well, I think we know enough people to know that's ridiculous. Basically, I see when they started rolling out the climate argument really seriously, it started in really the late 60s, early 70s with Greenpeace and organizations. The first Earth Day was in 1970. Those freaks, like one of the founders, like I think he actually killed his girlfriend and composted her body, and he's still out walking around. Like these are above the law kind of people, obviously. But I can remember in the late 80s they were going on about this, and then of course, and it was like, okay, how are we going to have a global emergency where we can scare enough people to really, assume control over the real levers of power, that is the supply of carbon, like oil, gas, energy, basically control of energy. How can we, take that central banking model and apply it to what actually powers modern economies? How can we do that? Well, it's hard to sell the alien invasion angle. So
alien invasion is too hard. I think we're not technically sophisticated for that yet.
No, they can't do it. They keep dangling it from time to time to keep the true believers true believing. But for the most part, no. Climate was the angle to have a worldwide emergency. That's why Ball Gates, like Billy Gates, can talk about spraying stuff into the upper atmosphere to block out the sun. Like that wouldn't be an act of war against major powers, with nuclear weapons. Yeah, don't think so, Billy.
Yeah, that guy's a pathetic loser. That guy's just pathetic. He's such a loser. There's all these people that are there. Macron and we have footage here from the Gilets de Jaunes, the yellow vest movements there in France, and they were protesting Macron out back in 2017, 2018, 2019. That yellow vest protest went 60, 70 weeks, okay? And guess who's back in? Guess who just got voted back in 6 months ago, Supreme? Macron.
Yeah, well, did he really?
It's all selected. It's all garbage.
It is and it isn't. Look, the thing about elections is, there's the blood sport that you've got to go through in order to get nominated. Suggests to me that no, it isn't. You're going to select the winner of the blood sport. You're not just going to get somebody to come off the street and said, I think I could do a better job, and give people a chance to decide, right?
Right.
Yeah, the candidates go through a funneling process to get there, for sure. There's a lot of grooming going on, no doubt.
Right.
But it has to still look legitimate. And this is
no.
trouble.
Take a step back.
So many elections just, they're not even looking legitimate anymore.
That's
dangerous.
That's the thing. And if it doesn't even look legitimate anymore, there's going to be still a voice of the people that are going to say, well, we have to fix these elections. We can't have a racist at the White House. A racist that wants to protect his people or close his borders or deport illegal aliens. Like, like what went wrong that standing up for your country and believing what you believe in? What went wrong along the lines that it made you now a racist, a bigot, a transphobe for wanting to protect your own, your own people, your own, you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, it was similar to the nationalities policy in the Soviet Union. It was the same kind of idea, it was a severe suppression of expressions of religion, and also national identities.
Yeah.
You couldn't, okay, I'm a Belarusian, I'm an Uzbek, I'm a Russian, whatever. No, you're a new Soviet man. We don't talk that way here. Insofar as each of these areas had its own Soviet Socialist Republic, as it were. Yeah, they allowed that people had been there for sometimes 1,000 years, and you weren't going to change them overnight. But the whole idea was the same as globalism on this side of the world. to turn the world into an undifferentiated mocha mass that all believe the same things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Tower of Babel 2.0, right? Everyone on the same page. Well, it didn't work. And it's not working here, right? But, I mean, that's their policy. They've gone with it for so long. It's gotten them a lot of power. It's done an enormous amount of damage to all of us. And, you know, what can they do? You got a tiger by the ears. You can't jump off now. Right? Like they gotta double down and ride this thing to the end. They've got no choices now. It's all got to be about climate. It's not sustainable. And now you've got parts of the world like Russia, right, and China, and in India, to an extent. India probably not so much, but they're going their own way. Like there's rivals. There are actual rivalries in this world. No, they're not all controlled from one central office in a castle in Switzerland somewhere.
Oh, really? I thought so.
Yeah, not really. No,
I'm just
they
joking.
Would like it to be that way. Obviously, most of Europe is run that way. And how happy is the average person in Europe?
Mm-hmm.
Like you reach a point in time where they actually have to sell this stuff to you. You know, they got to tell you this is the way it is. They make it like it's inevitable. Oh, it's just progress. It's just the winds of change. And it's evolution. And you can't stop it. And yeah, but you're just tilting at windmills. And like, no, you guys jumped the shark 25 years ago, you absolute clowns.
Fangulo.
If they had just backed off the throttle and set it to cruising altitude about 1995, probably everyone would have stayed asleep.
Mm-hmm.
But they just couldn't. They couldn't leave it alone. Now it's all going to blow up. And in the end, I guess that'll be a good thing.
Yeah.
There's no future in what we have at all right now. At all. Zero.
No.
There's no future. Who wants to live without a future?
That's why we're seeing these teen takeovers in the suburbs of Chicago. These teen takeovers, I think they're going to manifest and get bigger over the summer when the weather gets good, because there's a lot of this youth out there that basically have nothing to lose anymore. I mean they got nothing to lose. So they're just going to go out and just go run amok and cause problems, get arrested, you know, just go through, because they are seeing what you're saying. They have no future, right? And
yeah, well, you're talking about big cities and, you know, Section 8 hellholes and stuff like that. Hell, look at our kids here.
Yeah.
What have they got to look forward to?